Hello supply chain friends. So this week I was going to make a video on a very different topic, but then suddenly the news came that the US government has put $100,000 additional fees on the H1B visas. Now normally I don't make videos on political topics, but this one was important because it has a direct impact on the US job market. And in this video I'm going to explore with you what could be the potential pros and cons of this change on the supply chain jobs in the area of plan, source, make, and deliver. My name is Jamil Hai, and I've been working in supply chain management positions across South Asia, Middle East, and North America for the last 20 plus years. And my mission is to help supply chain professionals like you build real life skills for your job and career that they don't teach you in college. And if you are preparing for a supply chain job interview anytime soon, you should definitely book a session with me because I'm going to take your resume, the job description you are applying for, and based on a combination of those two and my 20 plus years of experience will give you some laser guided tips and tricks that will maximize your chances of success. So go ahead now and book your session. Now, before we read too much into this change, one thing to keep in mind is that we don't know at this stage whether this is a permanent policy change by the US government or is this just a negotiation tactic, because what we have been seeing in the last 6 months since this new administration came in is that they keep changing these rules very abruptly, but in the end we may find out that this is just a negotiation tactic. And it's not a secret that there's a very hard negotiation going on about tariffs between India and the United States. The other thing to keep in mind that this does not apply to existing H1B visa holders. So this is only for new petitions or new applications. Of course, now this can be a risk for those whose H1Bs are coming for a renewal, because if I'm not mistaken, the H1B visa is given for a maximum period of 6 years. So for those whose visas are about to be renewed, this could be a challenge for them. But the ones who just got their visas are probably not affected by this. Now let's also look at which companies are the biggest petitioners for these types of visas. So what you see on the screen here is in the last 5 years, overall, which companies have been the leaders in terms of applying for H1B visa. So this shows you the top 10 list, and you can see it's a mixture, but it's very, very dominated by the technology sector. So you have got Amazon at the top, which is basically sitting at the cusp of technology, but it also has a very strong supply chain arm. Then you've got Infosys, you've got Tata Consultancy, Google, Microsoft, Cognizant, Apple, Amazon, Deloitte, and Meta. So definitely very, very tech-oriented leads when it comes to H1B visa. So that means that before we even get into supply chain, one thing is very clear, that the biggest negative impact of this change is going to be on the tech sector. But if we just peel the onion a little bit further and get into the manufacturing portion of this data. So in the last 5 years, who in the manufacturing space has given the most H1B visas or applied for them is Apple. Once again, so Apple does a lot of manufacturing in the US as well. We know they do a lot of manufacturing in China, but US, they've got also factories here. You've got Intel, you've got Cisco, you've got Qualcomm, Nvidia, Tesla, and then you've got Ford and so on. So clearly, once again, tech dominated, but manufacturing is also going to be affected, and hence supply chain. And then there are some other dimensions of supply chain which could also be impacted. And you can see here that if I look at the transportation and warehousing sector, you have got American Airlines, so a lot of airlines here, a lot of logistics companies like FedEx over here. So clearly H1B has a pretty strong penetration in the supply chain and transportation space. And then when we look at retail, of course, overly dominated by Amazon, lots of H1B visas sponsored by them, and then followed by Walmart and eBay and so on and so forth. So now, keeping all this perspective in mind, let's look at if you are working in the plan, source, make, deliver areas of supply chain, how could this impact you and what does this mean for your development? Talking about development, one of the platforms I want to share with you is called SCMDOJO, which is a fantastic supply chain specific learning platform. And they have got 3 amazing tracks. One of them is called the supply chain management track, which has got 22 courses. It's taught by 6 experts. You get access to 6 ebooks. There are 9 best practices. And if you really compare the content of this track, it's almost equivalent to the ASCM CSCP program. Another track that they offer is called the logistics management track. This is taught by 8 experts, 13 courses, 5 ebooks, 4 best practices. And this one is almost equivalent to the ASCM CLTD program. And finally, they have got the procurement track, which can be considered equivalent to the MSIPS program. This one is taught by 12 experts. There are 31 courses, 80 books, and 7 best practices. So definitely check it out. So let's start with the plan side of supply chain, which I've always said this a million times on my channel, that is the nerve center of supply chain. So if you are in the planning space, one thing to consider is that this change can definitely result in talent shortages for data heavy roles. There is a lot of research happening in how to improve the planning cycles and the planning process using AI technology. So any tech company which is trying to bring in more AI oriented talent into the planning space, and it could not be just the technology companies, it could be even manufacturing companies or companies that are very much integrated with supply chains. There we could see a huge talent shortage because foreign workers and H1B visa holders normally bring in that kind of talent in the US. So definitely this could result into a talent shortage. Secondly, for those whose H1B visas are about to be renewed and they are working in this in the technology side of planning, there could be a lot of layoffs for those kind of people. Entry-level jobs are probably at the highest risk, entry-level jobs in the US, I mean, because now with such a high cost on the visa itself, it may force companies to just keep that talent offshore. So if, let's say, you were going to come to the US on an H1B visa, now certainly because of this $100,000 additional fee, it has become prohibitively expensive for the company to offer you a job which is based in the US, but they still want to use your skill set. So they might just offer you a remote job, which you might be doing from India or from any other part of the world. So no need to come to the US, no need to get the visa, but you can still do a remote job. Now on the positive side, this is perhaps good news for those planners, whether they are demand planners, supply planners, or material planners, who already have got a green card or who already are US citizens, because certainly their demand for these kind of jobs is going to spike up, because now the international talent is not coming through. And therefore, if you are in the US, you've already got the status and you can work in the US, then this can definitely help you. Similarly, as the government intends at least to bring manufacturing jobs back to the US, and there are more factories built there, then the demand for planners who can plan production, plan shipments, and demand for those factories will only go up. So definitely pros and cons for planners in this case. Now, if I move to sourcing, which is the procurement and sourcing side of supply chain, there are a lot of negative impacts. So for instance, global sourcing jobs, international procurement could suffer from the lack of H1B visas and the talent gaps. And therefore, this cross-border kind of expertise could be lost or could be at a high risk. There could be very high costs leading to offshoring the sourcing functions to countries like India, because sourcing is not as easy to outsource as planning, because planning jobs probably can be done from anywhere because they are more dependent on systems, except for demand planning where you probably need to be very close to the market. But in case of sourcing, you are dealing with a lot of suppliers, a lot of different local players. So those are jobs which are less easy to be outsourced. So therefore, there could be a bigger negative impact on these. On the positive side, just like we covered in the planning space, if you are a US green card holder or a US citizen and you have got procurement and sourcing experience, then your demand will definitely go up. And once again, no matter how much, but if manufacturing in some shape or form comes back to the US, then just like planning, sourcing jobs will also have a higher demand, because once again, if you have to keep those factories running, somebody has to do sourcing of the raw materials, of contract negotiation with the suppliers, and so on and so forth. This could also result into opportunities for trade compliance specialist kind of roles, because in those roles, you need to know exactly the changes and the impacts of tariffs and so on. So if you have got those kind of trade and regulatory knowledge, then once again, your demand could significantly go up, because now we are living in a more protectionist environment, and with a restriction on visas, that means the local talent will be much higher in demand. Now let's move to the make jobs. Now, if you think about the make or manufacturing jobs, there will definitely be shortages in the skilled engineering and IT roles. Remember, a lot of engineers come to the US every year on this H1B visa program, right? So if you think about manufacturing, a lot of manufacturing is not just about operations management, it's about core engineering as well, because you need people who can build factories, who can install, commission different machines. So a lot of foreign workers come to do that kind of work. So there could definitely be shortages in that area. This could definitely lead to higher costs and potential layoffs in the high-tech integrated manufacturing. You may have seen the tweet from Elon Musk about the change of this rule, and he is really vowing to fight because, in his opinion, was able to build some of those fantastic companies like SpaceX and Tesla and so on in the US because he had access to the best talent in the world, and H1B visas are the source of that amazing talent. So he is really unhappy about this change in rule, and that exactly is linked to this point I have on this graphic over here. On the positive side, of course, if you are someone with a manufacturing experience and you are already based in the US and you are not reliant on any visa, then definitely this is good news for you. However, we just have to take that with a pinch of salt that yes, that means it'll be good news for the talent itself, but it may not be as good of a news for the US as a country, because now you are relying on talent which probably may not be as competitive in every single field with the rest of the world, which means that what has made US great, especially in the last 30 years from a GDP per capita perspective, and the fact that they have built these amazing companies like Apple, like Tesla, like Amazon, and the list goes on, is because of those kind of programs which bring in all this best talent, right? So we just need to keep that in mind. So overall, good news for you if you have manufacturing experience and you are already a US citizen or a green card holder. However, it may result into a shortage in terms of the right level of talent the companies really need to grow. Now, moving on to logistics, of course, just like manufacturing and the other areas, this would mean talent shortages in the right technology space. And we do know that the route optimization, the automated deliveries, they still need a lot of cutthroat global talent. And that could be at risk, at least for the US companies as a result of this. On the positive side, the push for domestic operations can boost local jobs, US focused logistics such as warehouse managers and transportation planners and so on, and encouraging nearshoring and reducing reliance on international supply chains can definitely be good news for the local talent which can work in the US. And then it is also going to create some stable roles in the distribution networks for the local US market. So I hope you enjoyed this video. I've also made videos on topics like how can you go from 0 to 6-figure salary in supply chain, and how is agentic AI really transforming the world of supply chain, which you can watch by clicking over here. Keep watching.